Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my review of AEW Dynamite for May 11th from Long Island, New York. It's safe to say that the crowd reactions for guys like MJF and John Silver, for instance, will be most boisterous. But before that, we have our first match in the Owen Hart men's tournament as Adam Cole takes on Dax Harwood of FTR. It's cool they've got, you can see shots of Martha Hart, Owen's widow, in the crowd watching this show, and it was also Owen's children, Athena and Oj, were there too. So really cool to see the family take part in the, be there to witness this first round of the tournament. And Dax has some cool nods to Owen as well. He had the Owen Hart logo on one of his knee pads, which is pretty nice. Good back and forth for a while in this one. The tide turns when Cole throws Dax rib first into the ring post. We get some of those Hart family tribute moments here, of course. Dax taking the chest, the Bret Hart style bump, chest first into the turnbuckle at one point. Dax with some big suplexes, that big rebounding power bomb off the top rope, some really some back and forth near falls, and the crowd's very much alive for this one. Dax gets the sharpshooter locked in, but he can't hold on to it too long because his ribs hurt, and then Cole puts his own version of the sharpshooter on. Dax submits, and Adam Cole wins the first match in the first round of the Owen Hart tournament. This is a terrific opening matchup in general, also for the tournament, and if this is any indication, the rest of the tournament should be a lot of fun to watch. We do get another tournament matchup for the men's side later on in the night. It's Jeff Hardy and Darby Allin, and there is a hype package for them after this match runs, where they basically say, Darby says, hey Tony Khan, let's throw out the rule book, let's make it anything goes, let's get psychotic. And so with that stipulation put in there, I really can't wait to see the contrast between this opening match you just saw and what the main event's going to hold. The world champion Hangman Page joins the announce booth as CM Punk takes on John Silver of the Dark Order, one of the local boys in Long Island. Punk is wearing an Islanders jersey, but it's still not enough to get any love from Long Island. They still remember how he treated them the last time they were in town. He was feuding with MJF. The crowd does love John Silver, though. This match was very competitive, very back and forth, but I think it almost was to the match's detriment. It made Silver look good, but I think too good. I like that CM Punk likes to do these competitive matches with everyone, regardless of where they are on the card. But I think that if you're trying to get Punk over as this big serious threat to Page, I think you can afford to let Silver get jobbed out in 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be this big knocky-draggy. Again, makes Silver look great. And I think that, if you're going to have him go down in his hometown, then you have him go down swinging. I get that. But I think that for Punk, I think he needed to be a bit more assertive in this one. And then afterward, he ends up winning the match with the buckshot lariat, which incenses Hangman. And so he runs down to the ring after the match is over. Punk on the microphone said, I think you're taking this stuff a little too personal, Hangman, because when I do my thing, it's all business, but you're making it personal. He responds to what Page said last week and says that in Vegas, he's going to make Hangman shake his hand, whether he's conscious or not. He puts his hand out. Hangman gives him the finger right to his face, which is the perfect way to end that segment, quite frankly. Like I said, I'm liking the back and forth and the wordsmanship with Punk and Page. I liked, like I said, the glimpse of kind of a heel Hangman we saw last week, but then this week, Punk was more the heel, just because of the dynamic of where they were. And so, again, the match was a great showing for Silver, but I think it still should have been a shorter match just because of the way that I think they should build CM Punk, frankly. Tony Schiavone backstage with Dr. Britt and her crew. Britt asserts there is a conspiracy against her because in the Owen Hart women's tournament, she is facing the Joker, so she can't even prepare for her opponent. But she's very excited for Jamie Hayter to beat Toni Storm later in the night, saying all storms start out super big and exciting, but eventually they peter out. And Schiavone brings up the fact that if Britt and Jamie both win their first round matchups, they will face each other in the semifinals. Both ladies kind of brush it off. And then our next matchup is the in-ring debut of the very nice, very evil Danhausen. He gets a whole big entrance. It's his first match since Halloween when he broke his leg in a match. The crowd's very excited for this. They love that Danhausen. But the match begins. Danhausen does the curse pose, but Nice jumps him, hits the running knee to the side of the head in the corner, and he wins. It was has to be one of the shortest, if not the shortest match in AEW history. One and done. Tony Nese wins handily against Danhausen. And then afterward, you've got Mark Sterling on the microphone, kind of rubbing it in with the fans and saying, hey, Tony, you didn't get an entrance, and he did. What's up with that? And so Tony hits another knee on Danhausen. He goes for a third one, but then Hook makes the save. He runs out, chases the baddies away, and then Danhausen offers his hand, and Hook accepts it. They shake the hands, and the pop for the handshake was tremendous. And so Hookhausen is for real. And we find out they are going to be actually teaming up at Double or Nothing against Nese and Sterling. But let's talk about the segment we just saw. You know, I have to admit I was a little disappointed in the length of this match. I know I was just calling for a shorter match earlier with Punk and Silver. This one, too short. A little too short for my liking. But be that as it may, I did enjoy the aftermath with Mark Sterling on the mic and Hook. The stuff they're doing with Hookhausen really seems to be working. You know, there's people out there who want to poo-poo it online, but listen to those audience members, man. Listen to that crowd. They are there for it just about every time. People love odd couple tag teams to begin with. People love that Danhausen. They love that Hook. This just feels like a match made in heaven. So I'm really excited to see where this team ends up going. It's time for the contract signing for Wardlow and MJF. First things first, Wardlow comes out with the handcuffs, no music, and the big screens just say, boo Wardlow on them, which is great. Then the real cherry on top of this whole piece here was this parody of Dark Side of the Ring, where it's got the logo. It's narrated by Chris Jericho, who reads it. He's like, wait a minute, is this for MJF? I'm not doing this after everything we've been through. How much is he paying? Okay, that was great. So Jericho's narrating this big puff piece about MJF and how much of a pig Wardlow is. You have sound bites from guys like Taz and from Barry Horowitz, famous Jewish wrestler, who says, take it from me, Wardlow's a jobber. That was great. You had the reenactments with the very obviously not these wrestlers like doing the actions in the ring. This was just so fun. And this took me back to the stuff we saw with MJF and Chris Jericho last year, for instance. So that was just brilliant. And then MJF comes out wearing his own Islanders jersey. Big heroes welcome here. And of course, he totally plays the babyface in this exchange. He's convincing the crowd to boo Wardlow heavily and everything. He actually name drops Cody Rhodes in this promo, says he's going to give Wardlow, karma's going to get him for the beatings he gave, you know, Cody Rhodes and everything. The American roller coaster is what he called him. So then it's time for the conditions. Basically, next week, MJF will lash Wardlow 10 times with a leather strap. We've seen that before. And Sean Spears, the exclamation point, showing the 10, doing the old Ty Dillinger taunt to really hammer home the 10 thing, which is great. And then Wardlow has to face, after the lashes, has to face Spears in a steel cage match. And the caveat there is that MJF will be the guest referee. So if Wardlow accomplishes those tasks, he'll have the match Double or Nothing. And if MJF beats him then Wardlow will not be allowed to ever sign a contract for AEW. So those are the stakes. Wardlow manages to trick the security guards into uncuffing him so he can sign the contract. He does it, then all hell breaks loose. He beats up all the security guys. MJF cowering behind Sean Spears. Wardlow takes out Spears, goes to powerbomb MJF, but that gets broken up. And then you got Mark Sterling with a distraction, and then he gets powerbombed through a table for his efforts. And that's where the segment ends there. This was brilliant. It was so fun. The Dark Side of the Ring thing was hysterical. Wardlow's big heroic beatdown after, and that's the thing. The people loved MJF, but when Wardlow did his thing, they were all still very much into it. So Wardlow, the love people have for Wardlow knows no boundaries, knows no geographic hindrances. In Long Island, Wardlow is still very much over there, it seems. So this was, just a great segment. We get a Samoa Joe promo about his match in the Owen Hart tournament next week against the Joker. He says ever since he's been in AEW, all he has seen is Jokers. And we hear from Sanjay Dutt and Jay Lethal, who say that neither Lethal nor Satnam Singh are going to be the Joker, but they've got someone lined up special for Joe. So I wonder, who could it possibly be? Then on we go to the rarely defended FTW title as Ricky Starks defends against Jungle Boy. And the whole reason for this match being that in order for Starks and Hobbs to challenge Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus for the tag belts, then Starks had to put the FTW title on the line against JB. Very good work early on with these guys. They're young, they're athletic, they're fast. This was a lot of fun to watch in that sense. great back and forth, great athleticism. Starks at one point caught in a submission, and I love his body language and his mannerisms as he is like clawing and dragging himself by his fingernails to get to the ropes. Swerve shows up. He's got beef with Starks and Hobbs, but he shows up at the worst possible time for Jungle Boy because he has a roll up, but the referee is out of position to make that count. Starks comes back and hits the Rochambeau to win and retain the championship. Swerve's beside himself. Luchasaurus and Christian Cage come out and they're upset about that. Then Keith Lee shows up and stands by Swerve, and we have this stare down between the champions and the two teams of prospective challengers. Ended kind of awkward, I would say. That part at the end was not the strongest way to end that segment, but the match itself with Starks and Jungle Boy, very well done. It's time for the Jericho Appreciation Society's victory speech, according to Excalibur, for some reason, as they toss a commercial break. The first notable line in the victory speech is Matt Menard saying that being in the Jericho Appreciation Society makes his nipples hard. Well, that's great to hear, man. Jericho gets on the microphone. He puts over Long Island since he was born nearby in Manhasset. Then he quickly left to get some heel heat there. He threatens to throw fire in people's faces because he's a wizard, and he puts over what they did to Eddie Kingston and friends. He says Jericho 216 says I just burned your face. That sounds like another shirt on our way to AEWshop.com. Daniel Garcia putting over sports entertainers on the mic briefly. Then Jon Moxley's music plays. He makes his way to the ring, and then after him, soon after, it's the rest of the Blackpool Combat Club. It's Bryan Danielson and Wheeler Yuta and William Regal, and so it's still 4-on-5. And then behind the Jericho Appreciation Society, we see Kingston and friends, and Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz. Eddie Kingston still showing the battle scars from the fireball a couple of weeks ago. There's a big "you fucked up" chant from the crowd as the baby faces descend and beat down upon the heels here. Regal ends up popping Jericho right in the face on the way out as kind of an exclamation point to end this segment. And I tell you what, it's good seeing the Jericho Appreciation Society get their comeuppance here after a few weeks of running roughshod. The formula kind of dictates it, but I think it was executed very well. I dig this little union here between the BCC and LAX as they take on JAS. Okay. There's a high package for the Serena Deeb Thunder Rosa title match for Double or Nothing, and you hear some sound bites from Dustin Rhodes and Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone about that matchup. And then we go to our first match in the Owen Hart Women's Tournament as Toni Storm takes on Jamie Hayter. This match, the best way to describe it to me was physical. These two really just laid into each other throughout the whole thing. Very hard-hitting affair. During the break, Hayter hits a snap suplex on the floor, but then later, Tony hits a tornado DDT onto Jamie on the floor. Hayter with a Uranagi on the apron at one point. These two are just beating the hell out of each other here. Honestly, Tony does not sell that Uranagi on the apron nearly long enough for my liking. I think she just got right back up and did the next spot almost. Storm ends up winning the match with a rough-looking pile driver. It was, I wouldn't say it was a scary-looking match. It was just like, or sloppy per se. It was just, hard-hitting, physical is the way I would describe it. Not terribly botchy. A little rushed near the end, it felt like. But besides that, I think it was, it was exciting in the sense of these two just really beat each other up, it seems. There's a high package for the TNT title match this Friday between Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian, two former brothers in the tag division as part of SCU. But then we get this interview with Kaz backstage. He is interrupted by Sammy Guevara and Ty Conti, and Guevara warns Kaz, hey, Scorpio Sky is not the same guy you were friends with in SCU. He will beat you up. He will tear your soul apart, basically. And Kaz is, he doesn't seem to be believing what Sammy is saying. So we'll see what happens with that match. But on we go to our main event. It's the second matchup in the Owen Hart Men's Tournament as Jeff Hardy takes on Darby Allin. And there are no rules for this matchup now. And Darby is on fire from the get-go here, throwing himself at Jeff early on. Darby brings out a bunch of chairs and arranges them in such a way. Jeff brings out the Jeff Hardy-sized ladder. If you see a ladder that tall, you immediately associate it with Jeff Hardy here. Darby with a flipping dive off the ladder onto Jeff and all those chairs. It is one of the roughest looking bumps I have seen. And from Darby Allin, that's really saying something. He goes for a coffin drop on the apron, but Jeff moves and so he misses. Like, Darbs, what are you doing? But not to be outdone, Jeff also does something incredibly reckless because he goes for a swanton from the outside onto Darby, who is on top of the side of the steel steps. But Darby moves, so Jeff takes a big old back bump, bam, on the steel steps. And it never gets any easier looking to see Jeff go through that. So imagine how he feels heels when you watch that sort of stuff. Darby with a clean coffin drop in the ring, but Jeff's able to kick out and roll Darby up in a kind of a crucifix pin to win the match. And I wouldn't call it an upset, but it was certainly a surprising way to end that match. But it was a good babyface versus babyface finish. I don't think Darby looked bad in this one. It was the veteran getting over on the younger upstart. And what a match this was. It was so insane. And I think for this like generational dream match of total daredevils and insane people, it's just, they did exactly the kind of crazy stuff you would come to expect from, these two guys. Maybe Jeff Hardy 10 or 15 years ago would have had an even more insane match. But I think what we got here, I thought was pretty fun. It was a big popcorn match in that sense. It was kind of like, big explosions, big spots. But the crowd was totally there for it. It was a very different style match than what we saw with Cole and Harwood to open the show. Not exactly the kind of thing that really draws up memories of Owen Hart, big bumps on the apron or onto chairs or diving off ladders and stuff. But it was still a great match in its own right, and I think it was a fun main event. The Undisputed Elite show up on stage and they stare down the good guys who are in the ring as we fade to black. My grade for this week's Dynamite is a B+. A really great episode this week, I think. You had a little bit of everything, a great balance of stuff. You had the great traditional wrestling with Cole and Harwood. You had the hardcore stuff with Hardy and Allin. You had the comedy with Danhausen, a little bit more of the comedy with MJF and the whole local crowd flair, just the whole dynamic being shifted when MJF is in Long Island. That whole segment was just great from top to bottom. The only thing I didn't like really about this show was just the length of CM Punk and John Silver, which was fine, a great match on its own. But again, in terms of the story they're telling, I really wish that it was a shorter match just to assert Punk more as kind of a dominant kick-ass figure. But that's just me. That's my little nitpick about the show. What did you all think of Dynamite this week? I want to hear what you have to say in the comment section below. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.